Hey, welcome back to No Hold Time. I'm here for another episode with David, Brian, and myself, Eric. In keeping up with recent tradition, let's start with a positive or negative experience you've had with customer experience lately. Anyone got anything good?
Yeah, I have a good one. Just jumping right in. This was a really unexpected positive experience because this has happened before and it was like the experience was bad. So here's what happened. I was playing some tennis on Sunday and I received a text message that said that my internet was down. Checked on my watch. And then I received like 17 messages from all my cameras coming offline. I'm like, oh. So then I go and check my cameras from the front yard, and the aerator guy was going. I'm like, I already know what happened. Aerator ran over the cable line. So I checked back. I got in that text message, there was a link. So click a link. It's like, hey, your internet's down. Sounds like we probably need to get someone out there. Click this link to schedule someone to come out. Click a link. There was availability in 2 hours, so I filled it. Went about my tennis game. By the time I got home, there was already a guy from AT&T at my yard. He's like, yeah, it's cut. I'm going to have to run a new one. I was without internet for like 3 hours.
You weren't even home.
On a Sunday.
A cut. You knew exactly what was happening before your all your devices went offline.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, like, if you think about the system, right? The system automatically knew that the signal wasn't working, then who I was, then what my contact information, because they texted me. It wasn't even through the app. It was a text that is integrated with their service team and their scheduling system. It got them their availability, my address. Dude ran out. And I was back up and running before the girls got to listen to their going to bed Spotify playlist.
That's pretty amazing.
For enterprise type shop, that's pretty darn good.
And were they able to, I guess, know so quickly that it was likely a cut because you were the only one that was without service?
Right. I mean, I would imagine that there are other people in our neighborhood. And I know there are a couple different options. So it's not one of those places where everyone has AT&T.
Yeah.
But I clearly was the only one that had an issue.
Wow.
That's the best cable cut experience I've ever heard. Because normally it's like the worst experience in the world. It takes 3 weeks to come do a new fiber line. It sits on top of your fence or your yard. You have to mow around it for weeks and weeks, and then eventually some third party.
Well, it is sitting on top of my yard, but the guy actually did a great job. He brought like little flags and then taped the flags on top of it. So he very clearly. I mean, I was impressed.
All right. Well, kudos to those guys.
Yeah,
on a Sunday.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I thought, no way, I'm going to have to call someone and then tell them that I need it because I work from home. Nope. They just said, hey, man, looks like you're down. Can we come fix it today? Yes.
Well, and the fact that you were not even at home, by the time you came home and he was already fixing it, you yourself in your house, you were without internet for 30 minutes, maybe?
Yeah. No, it's nothing.
Jeez.
So why don't we talk
That's
about...
how you do it.
So that's a great concept and segue into what I think we might want to talk about today, which is the various levels of business, enterprise, medium, large, small, startup, have probably various degrees of CX things they can do and should do. I think we should kind of pick on those a little bit because we kind of touch the gambit. I mean, we mostly work in the enterprise space, but we've all got friends who have startup companies. We've got, friends. We've talked to clients who are in the different, not so enterprise size spaces. And let's talk about CX as a whole. We talk a lot about AI and those kinds of things here, but let's just talk about customer experience as a whole. So the first thing that comes in my mind when I think of like small to medium business spots is, you ever buy furniture And when you open up the 75 piece thing you have to put together, and the first piece it says on the board is, don't go to XYZ Furniture Mart. Call this number to get parts if you're missing anything.
Yep.
And I had to do it once. And I was like, this is not going to work. I'm going to order this thing. I bought this bench for our entryway or something. And now it's going to sit in a box for a month until I get this part. I'm like, I could just take it back down the street. But it says not to. And I've never heard of this brand. I'm sure it was something I bought on Amazon or I don't remember what it is. And I called it with low expectations and I didn't wait on hold. They didn't have an IVR. Guy just picked up the phone. Was like, yeah, we have that part. Happens sometimes. Let me ship it to you. I got it the next day. And I looked at the company. They're probably worth $1 million a year. Like, it's not a big furniture company, and they probably do most of their production out of overseas. But like those simple moments, now I'll go back and go, all right, that brand is worth looking at one more time for the next time I need it. And I probably didn't spend a ton of money on it, which is why it was in 55 pieces anyway. But it's those kinds of CX things that you remember, and like I said, we'll probably go look at them the next time in that space. Is there any examples you guys have of small, medium enterprise besides? I mean, you just shared one, David, but how about you, Eric?
Do we want to talk startup or just small, medium?
Anything.
Yeah,
Anything.
Startup. I had an opportunity to work with a true startup in the financial space a couple years ago, and you could tell immediately that their concerns about getting this business off the ground was, we're going to have a very high touch approach with these new customers. In finance, it's very competitive. We need to make sure we're able to handle any inquiries for our customers. So the discussions we had on balancing automation, self-service, so what does this customer experience need to look like? It was all about effectively identifying why someone's reaching out to them and getting them to a human as quickly as possible. Everything else to begin with was off the table because they didn't know what they didn't know. They knew they were in a market where they needed to differentiate themselves out of the gate. So they didn't want to hear about those horror experiences of, I could never get to someone, I had this big issue. No, they wanted to make sure that every one of these new customers had that high touch experience. So that immediately, when you started talking about small to medium and your experience, even more on the smaller end, I think they wanted to feel more like a mom and pop experience. Like, you called up, somebody answered the phone, hey, no problem, you had it the next day. Because the market in those small to medium is extremely competitive.
Yeah.
So a lot of times the only way to differentiate yourself from a pure product standpoint is by that high touch experience. It's service.
Service, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think a good time to look at it is when let's just say there is a company that's smaller but is trying to grow, right? And so they internally are like, well, how do we get bigger? How do we double in size? And we just had a conversation with B2B construction company, right? They sell construction goods. And they're building up their sales team, and they want to learn a little bit more about their process and learn about their customers. And so they're putting in they're super proactive 5-year CX plan. And so they said, look, this is our ultimate goal. We want everything to integrate. We want our systems to talk to each other, but we're not going to do everything in 5 years. Like, what can we do to maybe pick up a couple things to be more efficient, to provide more answers to our customers so that they're providing a good experience. And so, like, some of the things we talked to them about is, how do your customers look up information about you? They have a website, but they don't have a chat bot or anything. And this was really cool because they said, we were about to install a chat bot a year ago, and then generative AI became a thing. And we said, well, let's take a step back. Let's see how this works out. And now they're thinking, well, I don't think we need a chat bot. I think we need to install something on our website that does frequently asked questions and leverages a large language model, right? And so I think it just depends on where you are and what you need. Like there are times like the larger enterprises, for the most part, like there's some that just absolutely care only about customer experience and they want to talk to everyone and that works for them, right? Like that's part of their identity. But I feel like when you're a large enterprise, it's about efficiency. It's what can you do to be more efficient, ultimately more responsible financially.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is even within the market size, there's almost a strategy within the type of product that your organization is offering. I had the opportunity to work in the prepaid wireless space. So a pretty large company, but because it was all about cost efficiencies that we were passing on to our customers.
Yeah.
If you're signing up for something that's prepaid, it's going to come at a lower cost to you. So as part of that strategy, we wanted to make sure there was more opportunity to self-serve, to automate, because the cost of having live agents available to handle those inquiries wouldn't allow us to provide the price points that we could to our customers. So it was almost a strategy within the product, regardless of the size of your organization.
I still don't know how they got out of that IVR.
I know.
Like I know you're talking about. It was Fort Knox.
It was magic. Yeah.
I think just to talk about like numbers and statistics and math on this thing, I think at least in my opinion, I'm far from a C-level person at an enterprise company. But every one of those levels is always looking at lifetime value of a customer. And if you think about, at least where I'm thinking about it is, if I've got a customer whose lifetime value is, let's call it $2,000, just for an even number, and my startup is a $300,000 company, 2,000 divided by 3,000 is a significant percentage. That same $2,000 is for XYZ cell phone company, and they're a $14 billion company. It doesn't seem to matter as much, or I shouldn't say it. It matters. It's just not as impactful when you lose it. So you do get levels of CX at startup spots where they're like, man, I just have to be hands-on. I have to have high touch. I mean, even in Omaha, I've got a bank here that's their whole advertisement. We will be humans. We will answer the phones. Don't go to those jerks who have automated systems that we might have sold them. Let's be honest. That is their whole stick. And that's what they believe is the right approach.
I think I could recite that commercial word for word.
I know
I've
you
heard
can.
it so many times.
It's always on sports radio.
It is.
But that lifetime value number is interesting because you're right. Enterprise to me seems like they care about, efficiencies. Yes, they care about that lifetime value, but they're in gross numbers. Whereas, startup might have several thousand or instead of several million. Like that's the difference in some spaces.
Yeah, and you have to be careful too with the lifetime values, whether it's heart scores or a number, to assume that you're, on a scale of 5 hearts, you're a 5, which is the highest, you're VIP. Me as a consumer, I still may want to have options for me just to get in, self-serve, and get out. I don't want to talk to anyone. So even though I'm high value to you, you still have to know the preference of that customer and not assume that we need to treat them a certain way because of how much money or how much value they bring to my business.
Yeah, good point.
Well, I had a conversation you just talked about a bank. I just had a conversation with a bank about like one of their goals is increasing that lifetime value of those customers. And so they're trying to figure out to leverage the IVA to upsell or to do more. And it's not upselling it in the IVR, right? It's asking a question that helps them learn about their customer that ultimately does get them to a real person, but it's learning more about the customer in the IVA and maybe suggesting some things that will increase the value of the customer. And it's a pretty large size, it's not one of the top 5 in size, but it's quickly growing and spreading across the U.S. And it's because they do provide their customers an amazing experience, and they're leaning into more self-service, but they're just doing it in a way that, like, ultimately, if you just want to talk to a person, you can talk to a person. But they've created their IVA so efficiently that customers actually just really enjoy it. It's been really cool to see how they've been leveraging it.
CX is a big topic too. So when you think about what matters, we often talk about headcount reductions because we can use technology to self-serve up front and not need the amount of humans. But when you get lower in the scale of businesses, there's only so many, things you can deflect. Yeah. There's only so many human beings that work at your company. And a lot of times that's where the ROI challenges are, is how big can you grow self-service? But we talk about pharmacy often.
Yeah.
There's only 2 or 3 people in the office. Yes, they could do different higher value activities, to your point about efficiency. But if it's a mom and pop pharmacy, that's their whole staff. They're not going to go cut, cousin Jimmy, because he's still working 5 hours a week. He's just not doing outbound calls anymore. Some automated system might be doing it. Yeah. So I guess the question is, other than the phone space, like you've got in-person CX to deal with, enterprise has that fairly down.
Yeah.
Startup companies tend to your point, do everything they can, scrappy. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But I don't know where I'm going with this, honestly. I think it's important to think about that as you grow as a company is you might have started here. Now you're this big $1 billion corporation. Mm-hmm. Don't forget how you started there.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this as a consumer. When do you, and does it matter, maybe like it depends on what it is, like when do you prefer to go to a small business, right? You just talked about pharmacy, right? Would you rather go to a small and pop shop on the corner that you have to like take a script to, or get your doctor to send it to them, talk to them, and like all the old school ways we used to interact with a pharmacy, versus one of the bigger ones where they get sent to your doctor from your doctors, and then they text you or they send you, like, where is it? Do you pick and choose maybe where you go to a smaller startup or a local place versus a bigger chain?
That's a really good way to frame it, and a good question, because I'm a support local kind of guy. Like anywhere whether it's, clothes or home goods or anything, if there's a local store, a local boutique shop of something, I'm going to give them a chance. And you said a couple things, like the light bulb went off, like when do I really like that highly personalized, high touch experience? I'll give you an example. So went into this local boutique store, and they had something but needed it a different option. And the sales associate's like, not a problem. I'm going to take a picture of this, and I'm going to send it over to somebody that we partner up with to see if we can get it for you. Don't stick around. I'll text you when you get home. If we have it, I'll ship it to you. I'm like, how you can't ask for anything better. Yeah. Yeah. I'm valuable to them. They're going to go the extra step to try to find something for me, and then they're going to make it as easy as possible to get it to me. So I think in those smaller, like mom and pop or local companies, it almost feels like you're doing business with them because you want to support them, but you also know the experience you're going to get. They're going to remember who you are, and they're going to give you a very highly personalized experience.
Well, Brian talked about it. Like, you're a bigger percentage of their revenue. Yeah. And so clearly you mean more to them. But also, man, all big ups to them, right? They are dedicated, and that's what you want. And I feel like if you're growing a business, you just have to see it. Like, you have to see it. If you're starting small, you have to value your customers' time. That's something that I've tried to teach my girls and other people I've talked to. It's like the most valuable thing anybody has, in my opinion, is time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get it back. You can make more money. You can be healthier. Like, you can never get your time back. So I think that that's something that you just have to think about. Value your time, your customers' time. Like, if, on a personal note, on a personal side, someone agrees to go to lunch with me or play 18 holes of golf with me, like, I take that personally and think, like, this person is going to spend a quarter or a third of their day, which they could be doing anything else, playing golf with me.
By the way, thank you, podcast listeners, for your time. That's a good segue to that.
Right?
That's absolutely right. I think there's an economic aspect to some of this too. Like, when you said you're a question, I'm thinking to myself, I don't have any pharmacies that are not big chain around me anymore.
Yeah.
They're all gone. But I've got a little butcher shop nearby my house that's pretty regularly, met. But I never had that as a kid, and I didn't have any money back then either. So when we would think about where to go, it was always cost. It didn't really matter service. I might go to the big blue, beautiful store down the street because I knew it was going to be cheaper than going to the corner meat guy, and I knew I was going to get what I needed to get done. So when you're younger and you have less resources to go do it, I think a lot of times it's just necessity. Like, let's get this done. I need to eat. I need to fill my prescription, whatever. But as you start to grow up and you start to see how good experiences are, and you might have a little more financial, then you start to think about, okay, I do want to go spend a little more money here. Like, for example, I had to go get some suits. I lost some weight. I grew up. I'm old now, whatever you want to call it. I had a bunch of events coming up, so I could have gone to, XYZ big brand store and bought dress clothes.
Buy one, get 4 free.
You got it. You got it. Instead, I went to a local guy. He knew who I was. He knew half the folks I worked with. I got an amazing deal. It was worth my money. It wasn't even that expensive, but they was a full tailor outfit. I mean, they found stuff that spots to tuck and things I didn't even know existed on suits. But it was, to your point, like, I got an experience out of that. I would have never done that as a younger person. Yeah. I think it's time, I think it's experience, and I think it's a little bit of resources.
It's what you balance out in, whether it's technology or anything in life, it's cost, quality, and time.
Yeah.
So if you want to pay a lower cost, you're probably gonna, pick two. So lower cost, probably lower quality. If you want it faster, it's probably going to be lower quality. But if you're willing to pay a little bit more, you're paying a little bit more. Like, you can go buy a cheaper alternative. I think you're going to expect that experience should be more tailored to you.
Well, and just an example, like when we were younger, Walmart was always kind of it's cheap, you're gonna run in, you're gonna not like it, the Walmartians of the world, like all that stuff existed, right? Those guys have an amazing CX shop, and Target at one point was like low cost. They're amazing CX shop, like the stuff that even felt cheap and kind of, I shouldn't say cheap, but that felt lower cost and less focused on customer experience and more about bulk selling. Had to change and evolve over time because they were losing market share to the mom and pops of the world, or whoever was competing against them that was putting CX in as their strategy. It's got to be a strategy because you can't be low cost anymore. I mean, I don't know how Dollar Tree is still around, but I'm guessing that they still do more CX things than we think. Like, there's still people in the store helping folks. I don't know. Like, there's all kinds of that stuff out there.
Sure.
Anyway.
I was going to ask you, is everything at Dollar Tree really only $1?
I don't think so. I don't know if you can get anything at a Dollar Tree anymore. There's one, they're putting one in by our house.
Oh, that's right. What's the other one, Five Below? It's about,
that's $5 or less. Yeah. Like, you get this perception that it's a low cost, it's not. Like, they have to focus on CX, otherwise they're just not going to have customers. They're just not. No matter how cheap it is, you can go spend $6 and find something better if you feel better about it. It's about feeling. Money is just a piece of paper.
So your suits turn out all right?
They did, thank you. Yeah. They did. And the guy called me and warned me they were a day late because the tailor was a little behind. Like, okay.
You know the good thing about getting tailored suit? Now you're going to stay in the exact shape you want to be in so your suits continue to fit.
I'm going to have to.
Good motivation, right? When you spend a little extra coin.
I'm going to have to. Anyway.
Anything else on... I think the moral of the story is there's nuance to everything, whether it's startup to enterprise. Everyone's going to be balancing high touch versus efficiency or, how to effective, self-service or automation. And it's a little bit of a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of different techniques you can employ.
And if you're a company out there looking at what to do, figure out lifetime value.
Yeah.
But make sure CX is in your strategy.
Yep. David, any parting words?
Thanks for stopping by.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. To go to mosaics.com/podcast to find all the past and future podcasts. Like, subscribe on YouTube. Go to Spotify. Thanks again for joining, and we'll be back.
See ya. You know Eric has the eye candy of the shorts on YouTube, right?
The YouTube.
The what?
So like if you look at
he's the YouTube
the eye
person.
Yeah, you're the
I'm
what
the
person?
Instagram, and then no one likes Bremer.
I mean, it is what it is, right?
Bremer's Snapchat.
I don't even have that.
Bremer's
even
on
have that.
Bremer's Facebook.
Facebook.
Little old ladies.
He's blowing up on MySpace.
Yeah. Tom's got you.
Tom.
Me and Tom go